Yo, what is up, y'all? It's coming back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. We've got three to get into: Suns, Pelicans, Sixers, Raptors, and Mavs versus Jazz. 3 game 6s, 3 chances for the team that's ahead to end the series. And spoiler alert, all 3 of the series did end tonight. So we've got a lot of matchups to talk about going forward to the future and how these teams ended these series. But before we get into that, please leave a like and subscribe. It helps out a ton. Let's start off with talking about the Suns Pelicans game. First, I want to start off this with giving a big shout out to the New Orleans Pelicans. They were not supposed to be here after starting off with like 1-13, 2-16, something along those lines. They were not supposed to be here, but they are much better than their record indicates. Brandon Ingram is a bona fide star. We know that CJ McCollum is really good. Herb Jones, Jose Alvarado, Trey Murphy, Jonas Valanciunas. They are a really young and fun squad. And Willie Green, I became a really big fan of him as a coach over the course of this play-in and then playoff run. They forced one of the best teams in the best team in the league up to this point in the Phoenix Suns to 6 games. I don't care if they had Devin Booker or didn't. That is still a huge task. And even in this game where Devin Booker played, they made them really fight for this. The Suns shot like 60% from the field and they won by 6 points. This was a grinded out game that took all the way up until the final buzzer and took some incredible performances for the Suns to pull this thing off as a 1 seed. It was really impressive from the New Orleans Pelicans. This team is far better than their record indicates. They are not the team that their record says they are. And when they had Zion Williamson in the offseason, hopefully he's able to get healthy over that course of time and come back. This is going to be a really, really good team next season. They're going to be a powerhouse in the Western Conference. I wouldn't be surprised if they're fighting for a top 5 seed with the way that they played, the way that these guys can develop. They get more reps and another training camp for those young guys. They had 3 rookies playing huge minutes. Jose Alvarado getting in the head of one of the greatest point guards of all time. Herb Jones locking up guys on both ends. Trey Murphy drilling some huge threes. He has the potential to be a really good 3-and-D player. Ingram, Zion, Valanciunas, Larry Nance Jr., Jackson Hayes has been really solid. They have so many good players on this team. They're going to be really good. And with Willie Green at the helm, I really think this Pelicans team is just a Zion being healthy away from being a force in the Western Conference. So I wanted to give them that shout out before I got into this. Hopefully he does come back and sees what the potential is with this roster rather than trying to get out of New Orleans, because I really think there is something special here. And it would suck to see that taken away because of, politics or whatever happens in that situation. Assuming everything's fine between the two sides, I'm hopeful that Zion will be back in New Orleans and we can see what this team can do next season. Now moving on to the Suns, who did close this thing out in 6. Chris Paul was incredible. In fact, he set an NBA record with the most shots made in a playoff game without missing one. He was 14 of 14 from the field. And that's what I'm talking about when I say it took incredible performances for the Pelicans to lose this game. Chris Paul had 33, 5 rebounds, and 8 assists on perfect shooting from the line, from 3, and from the field. Perfect. He didn't miss a single shot. Every time he shot the ball, it went in. And that's both a testament to Chris Paul's ability to really lock in these really high pressure situations. He's always been a guy that for some reason has gotten this label as a choker. I feel like people, they just give the label of choker or like loser to people who don't win championships, which a lot of great players don't. And Chris Paul has been phenomenal. Every year he raises his game in the playoffs. He did it last year. He did it for years on the Clippers with the Rockets when he was healthy. Chris Paul's always been a guy that has stepped it up big in the playoffs. And in this game, after the Pelicans tied this thing up 2-2, Chris Paul basically said, all right, I'm going to take us home. Devin Booker did come back in this, but he really wasn't. He was clearly very rusty and still coming off of that injury. He only scored 13, but Chris Paul completely took over, setting up teammates for passes and just getting them wide open looks, getting his own buckets, just somehow continues to lull defenders to sleep in the mid-range and shoot over. It doesn't matter how tall the defender is. It doesn't matter how close up on him they are. Chris Paul's going to get to his shot. He was hitting some crazy shots in this one. It's not like he was 14 of 14 and like wide open shots. They were super contested, tough buckets. It was an incredible performance from one of the greatest players that the league has seen in a really long time. First ballot Hall of Famer, one of the best point guards of all time. I don't need to give you Chris Paul's resume. I just feel like he's a guy that for some reason has gotten that rap as a playoff choker or whatever, when that's really never been the case. In fact, he had a game winner over Tim Duncan on one hamstring on the Clippers. Like, I don't understand how those moments get lost in translation, but all in all of this to say, the Suns are moving on to the second round to face the Dallas Mavericks, who also cleared out their series. I'll get to that in a second, but the Phoenix Suns really making a statement here that they really still can be good, and they took down a Pelicans team that was super gritty, really fighting hard at home. It was a pretty big accomplishment for this Suns team, which I know sounds weird for a 1 seed, but to go in and get this job done, that is huge for them, not having to go to a game 7 against a Pelicans team that has been wearing them out. This has been a really physical back and forth series, and so I'm sure the Suns are glad to get out of this one. Mikal Bridges had 18 after his great game last time. He was solid once again, including a steal at the end on CJ McCollum that really kind of sealed this one. 22 and 7 from DeAndre Ayton, 13 from Cam Johnson off the bench. They're pretty big performers. Jay Crowder kind of struggled again in this one. They're going to need him to really show up for next series if they want to take down the Mavericks, so we'll see what he's able to do. But all in all, just incredible to watch Chris Paul play. I think you really don't appreciate him as much unless he's been on your team. I mean, I know there are people who appreciate him a lot. There are a lot of people out there, but I feel like once Chris Paul's kind of on your team, you realize like kind of all the little things he does. So shout out to Chris Paul, Thunder legend, of course. Moving on from that one, we had the Sixers who blew out the Toronto Raptors 132-97. It was not close. This one in the first half was a pretty back and forth affair, but the Sixers went into halftime with a 1-point lead, and it looked like it was going to be one where it was going to be one of those that ends up like 121 to like 120 or something like that. Like both teams were kind of just scoring at will, especially in the first quarter and even a little bit into the second quarter. Like Gary Trent Jr., it felt like he could not miss. Siakam was getting whatever he wanted. And then the third quarter, they switched to a zone. And as soon as they switched to that zone, the Raptors like forgot how to play basketball. They just could not figure out that zone. So shout out to Doc Rivers, who made a really good adjustment, stuck to it, and they ended up winning that third quarter 37-17. Winning the fourth 33-19, ending up with a ridiculous 35-point win margin. The Sixers just really manhandled them in that second half. At halftime, Doc Rivers made a couple slight tweaks. James Harden was aggressive from the get-go in this one. In the first quarter, he had like 8 points or so, like really early on, including a dunk and a couple blow-bys, which we haven't really seen from James Harden in this series. He's been settling a lot, shooting a lot of floaters, getting blocked a lot in this series, but in this game, he really came out firing and got aggressive, and that was huge for this team because it opened up everyone else's game. When James Harden is getting into the lane like that, he's so dangerous. You have to send a help defender, leaving Joel Embiid open, leaving like Danny Green open in the corner, and he drilled a bunch of threes in this one. It felt like he couldn't miss. Tobias Harris was knocking down corner threes. Tyrese Maxey was getting open on the wing. Just all these different shooters were getting open because Harden was so aggressive. He had 22.6 rebounds and 15 assists, doing the things that they traded for James Harden to do. If Harden plays like this, the Sixers can go pretty far in these playoffs, but he's got to be consistent. He has to be aggressive, and it's not just aggressive in scoring, it's just attacking, because even if he doesn't look to score on those attacks of the basket, it gets guys so wide open because he demands so much pressure. So it's going to be interesting to see if he continues to play like this. After last game, Embiid said that he needed Harden to be more aggressive, and he very clearly took that to heart and really made it a mission in this one to get aggressive, attack downhill, get to the basket, and get his teammates open off of those looks, and that was huge for this team coming into it. The Raptors, while they're a great defensive team, they don't have a great rim protector, so they do have to send over those help defenders, and the Sixers did a phenomenal job of moving the ball, that extra pass when a closeout came on like one of those corner shooters to get it to the wing. Just a lot of great looks for this Sixers team. Embiid had 33 and 10. He was dominant in this one, including a couple key blocks. Tobias Harris, as I mentioned, was knocking down some threes. He had 19 and 11. George Niang had 6. Paul Reed had 9 off the bench. Just all in all, the Sixers really played their starters a lot of minutes in this one. Maxey played 44. James Harden played 42. Embiid played 36. Tobias Harris played 38. They really they were not letting this one get out of hand again. Even when it was like a 20-plus point lead in the fourth, they kept those guys in. Doc Rivers is like, we are not doing this whole blowing leads thing anymore. This thing is going to come to a close, and it did. This was a super dominant statement performance from the Sixers, now going to face off against the Miami Heat. I'm definitely going to make a video talking about that series, so if you want to see that, let me know in the comment section below, but I'm really excited for that one. Of course, Jimmy Butler facing off against Philly. You've got Joel Embiid against Bam Adebayo, which is going to be a really fun matchup as well. There were rumors that James Harden was interested in being in Miami a while ago, so a lot of fun narratives going into this one. I'm excited to see how it goes. Not going to make a prediction right here, but I think it's going to be a really fun series. Also, real quick shout out to the Raptors. They weren't supposed to be in this position, and even forcing a Game 6 after being down 0-3 when they Fred VanVleet was kind of hurt. Gary Trent Jr. had been ill. Scotty Barnes tweaked his ankle. They managed to force this to a game 6. That in itself is a big accomplishment, and Raptors fans should be really proud of the way this team played. They were a team that, I don't remember what I said, but I think I had them like borderline missing the playoffs, like in the play-in when I made my season predictions. So they definitely blew away my expectations. Shout out to this Raptors team. They've got a lot of potential and things going for them, with Siakam being great, Scotty Barnes having a great rookie season, Gary Trent Jr. is young, Fred VanVleet is an all-star. They've got a lot of things going for them, so I'm excited for that team going forward, and Raptors fans should, I feel pretty good. I'm sure they wanted to win this series, of course, and it felt like they had the chance to make a deeper run. There were just some holes in the roster, and with Fred VanVleet getting hurt, it just wasn't their year, and so I think they'll be back pretty soon. And finally, we had the Dallas Mavericks beating the Utah Jazz to end their series 98-96. This was a really close one, all the way down to the wire when the Jazz down 1, brought the ball down the court. Mike Conley drove into the paint and lost his pivot foot and traveled, which flashed this funny picture of Danny Ainge that I tweeted out. Go follow me on Twitter if you don't. But then it was like Jalen Brunson made one, missed one free throw. So the Jazz had a chance to win this game down 2. They ran a really good play to get Bojan Bogdanovic literally wide open. I don't think I've ever seen a more wide open shot, especially not in a moment in like the potential like saving game for a team season. Like, I have never seen that wide open of a shot in the NBA playoffs, probably ever. Like, there was no one within like 20 feet of Bojan Bogdanovic. He just lined it up and he missed. And it happens. There's a stat that I saw from StatMuse. The Jazz missed 78 of their last 100 three-point attempts in these playoffs. 78 of 100 is wild for a team whose like main goal is to hit threes. Like, that's what the Jazz do. They're supposed to be this really good three-point shooting team. They of course attack the basket with like Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley and stuff like that. But the three-point shooting is what they made their living on last season when they were a 1 seed. That was their big thing. One of the best three-point shooting teams we've seen. And so to see this massive fall off, it really goes to show that this Jazz team is kind of cooked at this point. I ran a poll on Twitter asking, do y'all think this is the last time we see Mitchell and Gobert together on the Jazz? And I think it was like, when I started this video, it was at like 85% yes. So people pretty much unanimously think it's time to break up this duo, or that something's going to give in that locker room. So we'll see going into the offseason. This is a super pivotal one for the Jazz, because I think it's very clear to me, and I think most people, that this team has reached their ceiling. But at the same time, like, this duo of Gobert and Mitchell have been pretty successful together, if not in the playoffs, at least in the regular season. So I'm not quite sure if they're going to make the necessary moves. We've seen Danny Ainge, who right now is in kind of that position to make these moves, kind of hold on to pieces maybe a little too long at times. So we will see the way that goes. But overall, the Jazz, it was not the season they were looking for. As for the Mavericks, winning their first playoff series since 2011, Luka gets his first playoff win under his belt, which is awesome for him. In this game, he had 24, 9, and 8. Jalen Brunson had 24 as well. 18, 10, and 5 from Dorian Finney-Smith, who knocked down a clutch 3 at the end. 19 from Spencer Dinwiddie, who was pretty meh over the course of most of this series, but showed up to play tonight, including a huge 3 at the end of the game. So all in all, the Mavericks heading into this series against the Phoenix Suns, I think it's going to be a fun one. Once again, I won't make a straight up prediction, but I think it's going to be pretty fun watching Luka Doncic in that second round going up against Booker, Chris Paul, Jalen Brunson, of course. I think there's going to be some fun moments there between the guards of these teams. I'm interested to see how the Mavs try and stop DeAndre Ayton. Do they try and attack him on the perimeter? Do they try and continue to force that switch of getting Luka? I'm sure Mikal Bridges will get the Luka Doncic assignment, so how does that go? A lot of fun things looking into that series, so if y'all want to see a preview of that one as well, please let me know. But all in all, those are my thoughts on the game site, my biggest takeaways. Let me know what your thoughts were in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what y'all have to say. Please leave a like and subscribe. Trying to hit 10K before the end of the playoffs. I appreciate y'all watching. I will see you all later. Real one, say it back.